One day I am standing in your spotlight. The next day I am lost among the crowd. I'm under your analysis, 'cause you're the cure and you're the sickness. Don't leave me shut down in the clouds.
First thing I want to talk about is your late style publicity campaign that you're running with your pink suits and all that. I thought that was pretty cool because I saw that happening kind of in the background. I'm like, what's that all about? So
yeah, no, I mean, nothing is planned.
Right.
That's the thing. That's the thing about all this. And my wife sometimes doctors, what's the word? Photoshops, but that's a harsh word for it.
Okay.
Like she's very good at making you look a bit more handsome in a photo.
Right. Okay.
I think they call it photoxing nowadays.
I haven't heard that. That's great.
No, I hadn't heard that either. It's quite good. I just heard that the other day for the first time. So she's very good at that. And I happened to say to her and to a woman who helps out with a lot of my stuff and does a lot of my online stuff, I said, oh, does this need any photoshopping? And my wife said, no, it really doesn't need any. And Morgan, for want of a better word, my personal assistant, sent back a few of those photos, I think just to make us laugh. And they were so funny. And I only have this one pink suit. But then I thought, I'll start putting them up online as though I'm embarrassed about all the publicity this album's getting and how I think it's all a bit tacky, as though the things were really there, and it just kind of, like everything else, it just kind of snowballed, and then I called an end to it today. So that lasted exactly 7 days and came out of complete happenstance. And really it's because everything in the world is virtual nowadays. It's also, not to over dignify it with meaning, but it's also was meant to be, or was my comment on what the point of spending those millions of dollars on the billboards in those places is.
Right.
I mean, obviously my photos didn't travel much further than my Facebook friends, 5,000 of those, and you. But if that had gone viral, you could say that was worth as much as the $1 million billboard in Times Square would be worth.
Absolutely.
And so it was a little comment on how ludicrous in this virtual world all that shit is. That's really it.
Yep. Well, speaking of virtual world, what are you going to do on Friday when the record comes out then? Have you got plans?
Oh, no, not at all. I mean, at the moment, I'm quite busy planning for this tour. We were rehearsing very hard all weekend. I think on Thursday I'm going to go on WXPN, which is our very good local Philadelphia radio station, and play a couple of cuts on it and talk with the DJ. But no, nothing in particular. It's the end of the school week. I'll celebrate with the end of the school week, I think.
Cool. And you do have some shows coming up at City Winery or something?
Yeah, mostly different city wineries. Yeah, I've been working with them on a show called Cabinet of Wonders for the last 10 years, and I know the lie of the land there very well. And also, this is for me, it's a slightly different show in that I'm doing a lot of singing and very little folk guitar playing.
Yes.
It doesn't really fit on the songs, and so I'm free with a microphone to just look stylish and sing and tell stories. So that's what I'm going to do.
Sounds pretty cool. So let's talk about the style of the album. It's called Late Style, and for somebody who's familiar with you from the name above the title, they're going to be somewhat surprised or taken aback, possibly. Have you thought about that?
I think in an artistic career, or a career in the arts, one has to keep moving forward. And every album, I try to be different.
Right.
Every album, I mean, I consciously go, okay, I'm going to make this with these people, and I'll use those songs. And then this one I'm going to use, But it all kind of comes in the end, unless there's a traditional folk element, and I've certainly gone there, it generally ends up as some kind of world of folk rock or power pop. On this album, I listened to a lot of different musics, as every musician you talk to does. And I think probably quite a lot of the musicians you talk to, they listen to a lot of music that sounds nothing like their music at all. It's just the way musicians are. I think that's not true of some people. But, you know, I think a lot of people have wider musical tastes than one might imagine, particularly because there's that feeling of knowing, you know, of over familiarity with your own world of music. So I don't necessarily want to listen to Nick Lowe and Marshall Crenshaw. I love those guys. I love their music, but it's not. So I found myself listening to quite a lot of, over the last 3 years, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, of quite a lot of jazzy things and quite a lot of, and it made me think, why do I always want to put it in a folky, rocky, power poppy setting? You know, there's people like Mose Allison, who was the original Randy Newman, if you like. And then there's people like Harry Nilsson, and they don't sound like folk rock at all. Then there's, you think of Nina Simone with her beautiful covers of Dylan and Randy Newman. So why does it need to sound, you know, guitar, bass and drums? So I kind of kicked that idea around for a bit, and I had this set of lyrics I liked, and I did a couple of them, and I was just like, I feel like these should sound different, but when I cut them, they just sounds like the same old stuff to me. And so I turned to David Nagler, who is my MD for the Cabinet of Wonders, and he knows everything I like. And I said, try one of these lyrics and give it to me, and knowing what I want, and we've talked about it and listened to records in my kitchen for the last 15 years and played with all those people from the Cabinet. Think about it and give me, and the first one he sent me was Where the Bands Are, which is why it's the first song on the record, and I just loved what he did with it, and so we just kept writing until there was an album to do, and then there was of course lockdown and things got complicated, and now everybody's got an album coming out anyway, but that's true. But I just felt that this was the way that I could do this album at this time, and it took, and I tell you, I don't ever like to repeat myself, but I feel at the moment I feel I have gone far enough down this path, and I'm definitely looking to, you know, do something else again with David, because I really enjoyed it.
Don't play so long, don't write so many songs. Here's a plan, do nothing if you can. Don't sing so loud, don't turn it in proud. Here's the plan, do nothing if you can.
And we're playing with my completely normal band who play every other folk rock set with me, and with the addition of a keyboard player, but you know, we're just playing different material.
Yep. Well, you mentioned Where the Bands Are. The first time, as soon as I heard it, the name that came to my mind was Georgie Fame. And Mose Allison definitely as well, but Georgie Fame.
Very interesting you say that. In fact, Georgie Fame was very much in the forefront of my mind for this stuff, but the one I associate with him is the one towards the end called Just Saying.
Oh yeah, okay.
It's got like it's the Where the Bands Are sounds to me like Sidewinder by Lee Morgan. That's what that sounds like. And that's the song we'll be opening with on stage. It's a very good opener, I think. Not that I've ever opened with it, but it feels like it's going to be a good opener since I'll have just stepped from backstage. But like with all my stuff, you know, that's about how when Bruce Springsteen had a song called Where the Bands Are, which you might know he had, it was all about, you know, I want to be where the bands are, having a drink and listening to the music, and that's how I'm going to liberate myself after a long weekend of blue-collar work, right?
Yep.
My song, Where the Bands Are, is that 30 years later, where the people don't, they do want to be where the bands are, but what they really want to be nowadays is at the meet and greet. They want to be backstage. It's so magical. They want to be one step furtherly interactive with everybody.
Right.
It's not much of a point to make, but that's where the song comes from.
Cool. Well, it's interesting you mentioned about the backstage and the meet and the greet and all that. I mean, I've been around long enough to remember being backstage at shows, and it was the most boring place to be because nothing ever really happened.
Well, it still is.
But now
it's
at least
still
there's some kind of, the artists feel like they have to because that's how they make their money, by selling the merch.
Well, that's true. But I mean, it still is the most boring place in the world, but people kind of think it might not be, you know?
Yeah.
But it is.
And I love the
Because
little trumpet.
it's people about to go and do their job,
Right.
and then having done their job, and of course at that point it's great to have a drink and invite your friends in, but that's 10 minutes.
Yeah, fair enough.
It's fun for 10 minutes. As Nick Lowe always said, playing on stage, you don't get paid for playing on stage, you get paid for the other 22 and a half hours.
Right. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Now, on Where the Bands Are, you've got a little trumpet thing happening. A guy named Danny is playing that. So when those little bits come into the record, are they directed by you, or how did the communication go between you guys making this record?
Yeah, great question. Everything was charted out. There is no solo played on the record that is not a planned part, particularly when it comes to the horn things, because those had to be done far away from us in San Francisco, where the producer, Chris, was mixing and producing, and so we'd send him the charts and the sheet music, and he'd find a trumpet player who could play that solo. I have never met Danny in my life, except this is cool. Right before the album, just after the album was finished, I had a Zoom call. It's very lockdown. I had a Zoom call for everybody who participated in the album. And we all got together and either met or said hi or talked about what we'd done or whatever it was. Because it's very weird making music this way, but So, really what happened was David's in Brooklyn, I'm in Philly. So he did the kind of original demos, which are what you basically hear, except with everything played by real instruments or as the right synthesizer, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So he did his part. I went up to his place and sang my demo vocals sitting on his bed. He then gussied those up while I shuffled my feet and was like, I really wanted to make this album with a live band, kind of live at the Green Mill, or like one of those albums from the old days where you rehearse so well that you can go to a gig and just that's your album. But that was, of course, COVID, and there was no chance of that happening. And then I was like, well, I don't want to sit on them any longer. So I started to kick around ways I could do it. And I said to my friend Chris in San Francisco, if we, David and I, get this together enough, can you finish it off for me with the charts? And he said, absolutely. And so he got his friend and drummer Prairie Prince to do the drumming in San Francisco, and all that drumming was on what we had in computer parts that was already on the demos. So Prairie went in there, listened to those, and kind of thought out how he could play them and how he could improve them. And then it was really just a question of just us getting it so so then we replayed some things around the drums so it sounded smooth. And then I was like, when I heard what was coming in, I was going we can't use my demo vocals. I've got to re-sing these vocals. And then we gave it to Kelly and Nora in Chicago, who had amazing backing vocals.
Yes.
But again, all those parts were stuff that, those are women you really want to let off the leash. But our vision at that point was so, because we'd been working on it so long, our vision was quite specific. So I think if you look at she did an Instagram photo at some point when she was in the studio, and somebody said of her music stand and her mic, because she was excited to be back in a studio after COVID, or during COVID, but and somebody said, oh my God, let me see what he's written on those notes. And if you could just see my notes in there, and it all said like, don't do this, do this, don't do this. I guess I'm a bit bossy.
Well, no, it's good to have a vision.
Yeah. And, and you need one when everybody's all over the place,
Sure.
And that vision really came from David Nagler.
Gotcha.
I supplied lyrics, and then I was, because I am bossy, I then said, well, I don't like this bit and I do like that bit, and this one doesn't have a hook, and that one, the hook's different, and all that stuff. So there was a lot of back and forth. Basically, the album, including COVID, took about 2.5 years to make.
So it's interesting, with COVID kind of making people work in different ways, like you just explained, with file sharing and all that stuff. When it kind of goes back to whatever normal is going to be afterwards, do you think it's going to change the way that you make music or people make music in general?
Well, I think it's going to change a lot of things. Like, for example, you just can't imagine those corporations saying to everybody, yes, go and have that 10-minute meeting in Melbourne from New York, you know, next Tuesday, and of course we'll fly you first class. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I think it's going to change a lot of things. For the way I do things, no. Because what I really like is being live with people in a room. Right. And the only way I'm very, very proud of this album, but the original idea was an even more old-fashioned thing where you just rehearse it so well that you go into a room and perhaps you have to do a couple of overdubs, but that's the record. That's an album I'd still like to make. But COVID won't really allow that record at the moment. So
maybe next year.
I don't know. It might. I mean, I've made albums in the past that it feels to me I could have made in this way. There's one called Awake that was very much made in little bits and bobs. It was when I was very into the synthy kind of heads trip hop. And I know that sounds like nothing that I make, but I was into those sounds and I wanted to have that vibe on my record as much as I could. And that was Chris in San Francisco, and I lived there then, but it feels to me like we could have made that album living in different continents.
Gotcha.
You know.
Now, one song I wanted to touch on was Hey Director, which seems to be kind of, obviously you're using a metaphor of a film director and blah, 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 but I'm assuming that you're talking more directly to somebody more spiritual, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I mean, you know, David was like, it's a kind of a Me Too song, isn't it, about the casting couch and stuff. And I was like, yeah, and talking to someone more spiritual, maybe. To me, that song, he's talking to a director, and what he's saying is, I really wanted something out of this thing we're making. It's a kind of a failure on every level, and I shouldn't really have gone into movies, and now I'm going back to music. So it's mostly, to me, it's about me attempting to do, or anyone attempting to do anything outside their sphere. People don't really like it. They like you in a pigeonhole. They don't like jack of all trades. They don't like dilettantes. And those people, if they're geniuses, they're Renaissance men, and if they're not, they're dilettantes. You know what I mean?
Yep.
You know, and I've been quite, you know, I do a lot of things. I write novels and I teach and I have a show and I co-author books and I just I had an opera on it. You know, it's like I do a lot of things. And I'm aware that to other people that looks like a mess. You know what I mean? And so this song's about... But the funny thing about this song is, I've recorded it before with a completely different melody. It's the only song on the record. I only released it on a very obscure little demo collection called John Wesley Harding Sings to a Small Guitar. But this lyric is one I've always really... I keep changing it. But the lyric is something I've always really, really liked. I like the idea of the actor speaking to the director and going... Everything's going wrong. I haven't got my lines. What am I doing here? And, you know, the extras are going to kill you. And so to me, you can read a lot of things into that because they're all going through my head. God is going through my head. The Me Too is going through my head. It's all going through my head. But to me, what's cool about it is that the metaphor is really the reality of it.
Right.
And then the funny thing is, that's why we're doing the song Movie of Your Life off that album Name Above the Title, because it's really about exactly the same thing, but I wrote it 40 years ago or 30 years ago. But it's about the same thing. It's even got a couple of the same jokes in it, actually.
Yeah.
So it's just funny.
Time for my close-up. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, that's Sunset Boulevard.
Yes, of course. So I noticed that you often, or from time to time, you have to assure people that the lyrics to your songs aren't autobiographical. This is fiction, that you're making stuff up. But I will have to say that How You All Work Me, the final track on the album, seems to be autobiographical. Is it?
Yeah, right. No. So actually, I'm going to tell you something here. How You All Work Me, because I realize this song needs a little explanation.
Okay.
I think, are you a fan of Loudon Wainwright?
Of course.
Right. If Loudon Wainwright sang this song, you wouldn't bat an eye.
Gotcha.
Right?
Yeah.
If Randy Newman sang this song, you wouldn't bat an eye. But I have a reputation as being not more sincere, because no one could be more sincere than Loudon Wainwright. Or, in fact, Randy Newman.
That's true.
If you really think about it.
Yeah.
But you know, so this is the kind of song Loudon Wainwright writes one of an album. And here's where it came from. There are novels written in Rye, which is almost my hometown in East Sussex, called by E.F. Benson, who was mayor of Rye, called Map and Lucia. And it was a TV show. They've made it into a TV show twice, once with Geraldine McEwen and Prunella Scales, and once with beautiful Anna Chancellor and, who was that? I don't know. Anyway, it's been perennially popular. And Lucia is much put upon, and she always says, her catchphrase, if you want, is, "Oh, how you all work me."
Okay.
And so today I was looking online because I thought it'd be nice to kind of explain this before I sing the song.
Yep.
And it is, and I'm quoting off a website, a phrase uttered plaintively by Lucia when acceding to a general demand that she should shoulder a massive burden for the common good, as when reluctantly consenting to direct, produce, and take the lead in the town's Elizabethan pageant. In reality, Lucia often eagerly anticipated or even engineered the call to assist, and was invariably more than pleased to try to help you if I can. So what it's about is about, yes, it is me, and I mean, I'm using facts of my life and the fact that I have 5 novels, you know, that kind of stuff. But what it's about is the fact that people like me complain about the stuff that they are desperate for.
Yeah.
They are desperate I am desperate to have shows be a success, if you like. I want people to buy me drinks after. And the song, the joke of the song is that the pretense is I'd rather be with my family and much less famous. And it's just not true. And everybody should know that's not true. So that's why I put it last on the album, because it's very much a goodbye song on the album.
Yeah. So I want to be at one of your shows next week.
I know, they're going to be amazing. They're going to be nothing like my audience have ever seen in their experience of me. And you know, in 30 something years, that's not bad to be doing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
That's not bad. That makes me happy.
Yep. Well, it's interesting. I hate to do it, but I'm going to anyway. I'm going to compare, bring Bob Dylan into this conversation, because I saw the live stream thingy. Well, it wasn't live, but it was a streaming thing that he did a couple of months ago, and nobody knew what he was going to do, and he just keeps doing that. He just, you know, how the heck?
It was. I thought it was really good. And by the way, I wrote a very long article on that for the Times Literary Supplement in the UK, if you can find that.
Oh, I will. Okay.
It's a nice piece. It's called, they actually used my title for once. It's called Bob Dylan's 116th Dream, the piece.
he's moved on from his 115th. That's great.
Yeah.
But do you see yourself doing something along those lines? And why? I mean, I don't know.
I can't afford to do anything with a bunch of cameras in artily shot black and white with 30 paid actors who are not only paid to act, but also to pretend they don't know it's Bob Dylan on the stage. That it's just some bloke.
Like beans.
That's why the band's masked.
Right. That's fantastic.
No, I'm afraid I've workshopped all these jokes in my review. I mean, that's what my review is. Well, you know, as my friend Eugene always says, cobbling together a life in the arts. That's what I'm doing. I've been doing it for 30 years. It keeps rolling along. If someone asks me to teach, as I will be doing tomorrow afternoon, I will probably do it. If somebody asks me to help them with their memoir, provided it's not somebody I don't like and I'm only doing it for money,
Yep.
I will probably do it. I like writing. I like being involved in every aspect of the creative process. And so I never quite know what's around. I mean, who'd have thought that I would have an opera performed this year,
Right.
It's 800 people a night at the Edinburgh Festival for 3 nights. I only wrote the words, obviously, but
Yep.
if 2,400 people came to see me play a few songs, I'd be playing arenas. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's crazy how the arts are all, to be this big in one art form is like being that big in another art form. They're all magically all tied together. Some are supported by the state. Some are, some are not.
Yeah.
Some you have to make your own way. Others you need a teaching job to. And so somehow magically, if you all put it together, I get to still be making music and doing an interview with you, or indeed whoever, in 33 years after I start, 34 years after I start, and that's a pretty much of a miracle because I have never had a hit single.
That's true.
My biggest ever thing was a song on the High Fidelity soundtrack.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I know how the money comes in from that even still. So, I mean, that's how you make a career, is get 20 of those and
Off you go.
golden.
Yep. So what are you working on next? Anything exciting?
Well, that's a very good
Is it
question.
a book? Is it music? Is it opera?
Well, here's the 24-page speech I will be giving tomorrow to my class at the Rosenbach Museum on the 7th volume of the 12-volume series Dance to the Music of Time. And this is the Valley of Bones, and so I'm doing one book a month for 12 months. I thought that lockdown was an ideal time to take a big project, and the Rosenbach asked me to do it, and I was very happy. I think what I should be... It's so funny because so much of this year and has been leading up to the release of the album. And I mean, you can't see, but the room is just full of all the paraphernalia for the album, the glasses and the I don't know what you can see, but like we made glasses and cocktail recipes and all kinds of shit, t-shirts, and it's just all everywhere around my life. And actually, once that's done and I get to relax and play some shows, that would be really nice. But really what I should be settling down to do is my next novel, which I know what it is, but I just haven't had time to do it.
Yeah. Are you in a different headspace when you're writing a novel as opposed to when you're writing music?
Yeah, I think the music I could seem to be able to do that in a car, on a plane, on a napkin. It's like a line, and then you think of one thing, and then you're feeling a bit inspired. You know what I mean? But the novel, I got to sit down, and often I find I need a day to just clean up my desk before I even start. And that's kind of metaphorical rather than real, but I need a day to sit down and just go, oh, where did I leave this? What am I doing? Let me do something else entirely. So it's like you need a bit of decompression with that. I feel the headspace is one you need to be around for.
Yeah. Very good. Have you ever been to New Zealand?
No, I would love to go to New Zealand. I would love to go to Australia. I have a bit of New Zealand in my life, which is that I had a beautiful friend called Frances Lang, and she got married to, I introduced them. She was my flatmate in London. Actually, her boyfriend was my flatmate, but anyway.
Right.
And I introduced her to my friend Mark Brand, who was my best friend. And they got married, and then they died on their honeymoon.
Oh my God.
In a horrible plane crash. It was a famous one at the time, so mid-90s. It was a flight from Lima to kind of Chile and Peru is where they were flying, and the plane, the sensors went crazy and they drove into the side of a mountain. And so there's a lot of Langs out in New Zealand that I have sometimes felt like I would go and say hello to in the back of my mind.
there's still time. Hopefully you can come
Oh
back.
yeah, no. I'm not going anywhere. But it's funny, you know. I never quite got, like a lot of people. There was a moment when I felt there was a really nice Australian record company who were kind of being very friendly to me. I can't remember what they were called. And there was a moment when I felt like, oh, they're going to put out my record. But then when you're on Warner Brothers, you know, they won't let you go on any little record labels.
Right.
So if Warner Brothers Australia aren't really interested in you, it's not going to happen, because they're not going to let you go on festival records. You know what I mean? Then I'm that wasn't the label. I can't remember who it was, but I know that is you know. So it's like, so it never. So there was never quite the thing for me to come over for, which is a regret, because it's somewhere I've always wanted to go. Our drummer in the English UK, Adam, is married to a Australian woman called Greta Gertler, and I know she does a lot of stuff, and she's talked about us doing something there because she tours there, and you know, I don't know. And but it's annoying. It's very annoying. I like to go abroad, and I particularly like to go to places where, you know, like it's very different, but they speak English. I mean, that's the best
Exactly.
possible
That's
word.
kind of why I moved here. At least they speak English.
When did you move there?
94.
And has it been good to you?
Oh yeah.
Good.
That's smartest thing I ever did in my life. Yeah, and the English is definitely different here. I'll tell you that.
Oh yeah.
But that's just part of the deal. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for spending so much time talking to me. That's been fantastic. And
No
hopefully
problem.
your shows go well in Boston and New York. And hopefully you can bring them down here at some point. We'd love to see you.
I'd be lucky to get to you solo, but with a band would be a fucking miracle. Anyway, it's great to meet. It's great to meet you. Thanks a lot for doing the interview, and I'll speak to you soon.
You bet. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye, Marty.